So I've talked about how to squeeze the absolute most out of your HX Stomp in a couple of videos, and I stand by that. It can do so much. It has a lot more potential than it looks like it does, than it seems like it does at face value, and it retains a relatively low price tag and high level of convenience compared to other modelers. But it still does have its limitations. It's still 3 switches, it's still limited DSP. And so what do we do next? What do we do once we've squeezed every bit out of it? Well, I've got some ideas for you. You still don't need to upgrade to another modeler. You don't need to scrap the Stomp and just get pedals again. So today I'm going to show you 3 ways that I occasionally extend the functionality of my HX Stomp to continue getting the most out of it while reaching beyond its limits. And I'll throw in a few honorable mentions as well. I don't necessarily use all of these, but I have used some of them and I've seen them used this way, and it's just a really useful unit, even mixed in with some stuff. So right now we're looking at my HX Stomp and we're looking at a preset that I use the most. But this isn't how I use it. I've just set it here as a good starting point. So for reference, here's what we've got. Here's our just first snapshot, nothing on, or no drive on. We've got a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay. Drive. And then to cycle through our snapshots, we're on the first one. Our second one, we've got a strong dotted eighth delay. And then a very washed one. We've got our tap tempo. So for our simplest, most basic extension of the HX Stomp, this one's sort of obvious, but we've got foot switches 4 and 5. Plug it in right here. And I have these already assigned. They are hooked up to a compressor block and a gain block, a drive block. And I also have it set up to do the gain staging that I've talked about in previous videos. If you haven't seen those, go check them out. But whenever I have this one on paired with this one, it is very gainy. So I've got this one also cranking up the gain on this overdrive block, but you wouldn't hear that without this on. And as an extension here, we've got an honorable mention to an expression pedal that can go into this too, but I don't have one. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but these 2 switches really open up a lot of real estate on the HX Stomp. I mean, with this guy being a tap tempo, we've basically got 100% increase in our switches here. Or even if we didn't have the tap tempo on, if we had that as another switch, that's still another like 67% increase in our number of switches, which is just a lot of bang for the buck whenever you look at the price of getting one of these. This actually came with my Vox amp and I'm just able to use it here, but getting these extra foot switches is relatively inexpensive and a great addition to pair with an HX Stomp. The only downside to something like this is honestly just the fact that it's something extra. Like, you're increasing your box need by 100%. You now have 2 boxes instead of 1. Other than that, like, it doesn't even require any power. It's just awesome to have. Now, our second extension is going to be a MIDI controller. And a MIDI controller can do a number of things for you with an HX Stomp. But for me, what it does is it frees up this tap tempo. And better than that, it gives me real BPMs. Like, I am not very precise at tapping in what I need. And so it's really nice to just have this. It says 108 and this is 108, which, by the way, if it's MIDI controlled, this is going to be blue. But not only is this more precise, but now I am freed up to go and turn this off. Global settings, and we get our third foot switch back, which in my case, I just have it assigned to another effect. This is the down octave that I mostly use for like high leads. But this isn't a video about this guy. The point is, we get this spot freed up, we get a more precise thing. And this in particular is the Sailor Quartz. I'm not going to do a full video about it, but it's a controller that would go great on any pedal board. It's got 4 quarter note outs. It's also got a MIDI in and out, so it could be controlled externally as well. But to be honest, in settings where you have an external MIDI controller, you could even just hook it straight up to here. I've had it set up to where at our church we run tracks, and I've just wired it directly up to this, and I've been able to control my BPMs that way. So that's another option for a MIDI controller. I feel like MIDI is something that can be really overlooked for a small unit like this, but extremely powerful, because there are other MIDI controllers where they are basically just more switches. Instead of using something like this, you have a MIDI controller that gives you 5, 6, 8 switches, however many, and then suddenly that's not a limitation at all. But to really showcase this, you can hear my BPM, and then whenever I switch it, it sends it straight in. And you get a cool little spaceship noise. Maybe you don't want that. Obviously, be careful with how you use it. Now, I love having something like this because it is tiny and it fits right alongside this. It's easy to bring along with it. It's just another tap tempo. I can just tap on this and it will send that in, but it also controls it based on presets that I've made. The downside is, once again, that it is another item that you have to like bring along, and then also that it requires its own power. It's not just passive like this one. You actually have to power it, so you have to bring another power source. A lot of times I'll keep a power strip in my bag just so I can like easily power both of these if that's not readily available. Now, the third idea, and I'm going to make a little bit of room because it's a little bit bigger, is another HX Stomp. Now, I know this is kind of cheaty. You can use really any modeler or pedals or anything else you want, really. Now, there's a fair amount that you have to take into consideration here. Order matters, but basically the way that I've set this up is that I'm going into this blue one, out into this silver one, and then I've moved my USB from here, but like normally you would output from this one. The reason order matters is the same reason that any signal chain order matters. And then the other thing to take into consideration here is that you can see I have Bassman Live up on both of these. You really don't want that. They both got amp blocks on them. But I've done this a couple of times where I have a preset called Bassman Front on this one, and then I have a preset called Bassman Back on this one. And basically what I have going on here is drives and amp on this one. I just generally feel like I'm probably going to need less out of this one. So I've got my amp drive, my overdrive, and my compressor on this one. And then I've basically just got a bunch of effects on this one, as well as my snapshots, my standard snapshot configuration. So I've got my drives over here. And then going into this one, I've got basically everything that I would want in front of my amp. So we've got a little tremolo, maybe phaser, maybe a little chorus. Crucially, though, I've got no amp block going on this one. You can see it's just effects, and then I've got a looper on it in case I decide to do that. Of course, you can get the same idea out of something like an HX Effects because it doesn't have amp capacity on it. In fact, I'm pretty sure besides form factor and amps, the XL is basically the same in terms of like DSP and number of switches as the HX Effects. Of course, you could always just use another stomp. I mean, you can see a lot of familiar things going on here. I've got this down octave. I've got this as my snapshot control, still just looping through it, but it's just a daisy chain set of HX Stomps that provide more or less the DSP as the normal like flagship Helix floor unit, a comparable amount of switches, and probably comparable price tag. I mean, last I checked, this was going for like $430 on Reverb. This is always like only $50 ahead of it. So both of these guys for less than $1,000 to me just feels like I have everything I could possibly need in both of those. Like by being able to extend this by using one of these, like I can't really run out of room. Now there are a number of downsides with doing it this way, and I really don't do it this way very often at all because I can just get everything I need out of one of these two guys. The first is that you have to own two of them. Why would you own two of them? Why not just upgrade to a bigger one? Well, for me, it's so that I can just use one, right? One is almost always enough for me. In order to run two, you have to power both of them with their special HX Stomp power. As we've talked about, there's two units now instead of just having a single one. Like if I was going to run both of these all the time, I'd probably just upgrade and get something a little bit beefier, probably a quad cortex or a bigger helix. But for me, the value in being able to run both of these is the fact that I can just run either one of these if I want to, which is usually what I'm doing. And so for me, it's just the ability to kick it up if I really need to. Now, why would you have two HX Stomps? For me, I just like this blue one. Whenever I upgraded, I couldn't get rid of this one. And the convenience and redundancy of having two just gives me a little bit of peace of mind. On top of the fact that, like, even though I'm talking about my HX Stomp, the XL for me is the best bang for buck, the best value for the money. You can get the most out of it. And the nice thing about having two of these instead of two other units or things like that is that they're the same software. They work the same way. So I didn't have to learn two things. I didn't have to learn how to use two units. And in fact, for something like this, I could just export my Bassman Live preset, put it into here so they both have it. And then really to get the front and back situation, I just modified that same preset. Like you can see over here, even though I'm running these as drives, I have the other modulation stuff on there just turned off. And of course, this is just in stomp mode, so there's a lot further that I can take it using some of the tricks that I've talked about in other videos. I just didn't really feel the need at the time because I have all this real estate. But I do feel like that this is a trick that is like easy to overlook. Like, why would I need two? Well, because you usually want one, but occasionally one might not be enough. So rather than upgrading, you can just get a second one and then still have the ability to pair it back to just using one. Now, like I said, you can obviously do this with anything. I see this thing on pedal boards with a bunch of other pedals all the time. It's got a send and return loop. You can set anything before or after it. I'm sure it would do just fine instead of pairing with another stomp, pairing with like a fractal or quad cortex, or even like a little nano cortex. But for me, this just fits my workflow best, and so I think it's worth taking into consideration. those are some ways that I have and do extend my HX Stomp to get a little bit more out of it than it offers just as the base unit, while still retaining the low price tag and the high level of convenience that is important to me. That little thing just offers so much bang for buck. It is my favorite modeling unit, and I don't know, until the HX Stomp Stadium unit comes out, maybe, if ever, I don't see myself upgrading for a long time. So let me know which of these you do. Let me know like what other tips and things that I didn't talk about that maybe I'm sleeping on. Drop that in the comments for me. If you made it this far into the video, hit that like button and subscribe if you're into this sort of thing. I will see you in the next one.